Cassava flour is a big deal in many parts of the world. It comes from a plant called cassava. This plant grows in hot places. Many people in Africa and South America eat food made from cassava flour every day. It's a key part of their meals. Cassava flour is special because it's easy to make. You can make it at home or in a factory. It's also cheap. This makes it a good choice for people who don't have much money. In some countries, cassava flour is more common than wheat flour. People like cassava flour because it tastes good. It can be used in many dishes. You can make bread, cakes, and even noodles with it. Cassava flour is also good for people who can't eat wheat. It doesn't have gluten, which some people are allergic to. Cassava flour has been around for a long time. People in Africa and South America have been making it for hundreds of years. Today, it's becoming popular in other parts of the world too. More people are learning about its benefits. This is good news for the farmers who grow cassava. The cassava plant is tough. It can grow in places where other crops can't. It doesn't need much water. It can handle poor soil. This makes it a good crop for farmers in hot, dry areas. Cassava plants can grow up to 3 meters tall. They have big leaves and long roots. Farmers plant cassava by putting pieces of the stem in the ground. These pieces grow into new plants. It takes about 8 to 12 months for the plants to be ready for harvest. During this time, farmers need to keep weeds away. They also need to watch out for pests. When it's time to harvest, farmers dig up the roots. Cassava roots are big and heavy. They can weigh up to 15 kilograms each. The roots are full of starch. This is what makes them good for making flour, but the roots also have some poison in them. This poison needs to be removed before eating. Harvesting cassava is hard work. It's usually done by hand. Farmers use tools like hoes and machetes. They have to be careful not to damage the roots. After harvest, the roots need to be processed quickly. If not, they can go bad. This is one of the challenges of growing cassava. Section 5, Old versus New, comparing cassava flour processing methods. Traditional and modern methods of making cassava flour each have good and bad points. Traditional methods are slow, they take a lot of time and work, but they don't need expensive machines. This means anyone can make cassava flour at home. Traditional methods also use less energy. They rely on the sun for drying. Modern methods are much faster. They can make a lot of flour in a short time. This is good for meeting high demand. Modern methods also make more consistent flour. Every batch is the same quality, but modern methods need expensive machines. They also use more energy. This can be a problem in places with unreliable electricity. Traditional methods often make flour with a stronger flavor. Some people prefer this taste. Traditional methods also keep more nutrients in the flour. This is because the process is gentler, but traditional methods can be less safe. If the poison isn't removed properly, the flour can be dangerous to eat. Modern methods are safer. They can remove more of the poison from cassava. Modern methods also waste less of the cassava root. They can use parts that traditional methods throw away. But modern methods can sometimes overprocess the flour. This can remove some of the good nutrients. In the end, both methods have their place. The best choice depends on the situation. Section 6, Challenges faced by cassava flour producers. Making cassava flour isn't easy. Producers face many challenges. One big problem is that cassava roots go bad quickly. After harvest, they need to be processed fast. If not, they rot. This means producers need to work quickly. It also means they need to be close to where cassava is grown.
Another challenge is the poison in cassava. This poison needs to be removed during processing. If it's not removed properly, the flour can be dangerous. Producers need to be very careful. They need to test their flour to make sure it's safe. This takes time and money.
For small producers, getting equipment is hard. Good machines for making cassava flour are expensive. Many small farmers can't afford them. They have to use old methods. This makes it hard for them to compete with big factories. It also means they can't make as much flour.
Weather is also a problem for cassava flour producers. If it rains a lot, it's hard to dry the cassava. This can slow down production. It can also make the flour go moldy. Climate change is making this problem worse. Producers need to find ways to dry cassava even when the weather is bad.
Section 7, Opportunities in the cassava flour industry. Despite the challenges, there are many opportunities in cassava flour production. More people are looking for gluten-free foods. Cassava flour is perfect for this. It's becoming popular in countries where it wasn't common before. This means there's a growing market for cassava flour.
Cassava flour can be used in many products. It's good for making bread, cakes, and noodles. Some companies are using it to make snack foods. Others are using it in baby food. There are many new ways to use cassava flour. This creates opportunities for new products and businesses.
In some countries, governments are supporting cassava production. They see it as a way to improve food security. They're helping farmers grow more cassava. They're also helping build better processing facilities. This support is creating new opportunities for cassava flour producers.
There's also a growing interest in sustainable foods. Cassava is a sustainable crop. It doesn't need much water or fertilizer. It can grow in poor soil. This makes it a good choice for environmentally friendly farming. Producers who focus on sustainable cassava flour could find new markets.
Section 8. The nutritional value of cassava flour.
Cassava flour is more than just filling. It has some good things in it. It's high in carbohydrates. This gives people energy. Cassava flour also has some fiber. Fiber is good for digestion. It helps keep your stomach healthy. One special thing about cassava flour is that it has resistant starch. This is a type of carbohydrate that acts like fiber. It can help control blood sugar. It's also good for gut health. Some studies say resistant starch might help prevent diseases. Cassava flour doesn't have much protein. It also doesn't have many vitamins. But it does have some minerals. It has some potassium, calcium, and vitamin C. These are good for your body. Some producers add extra vitamins to their cassava flour. This makes it more nutritious. People with certain diets like cassava flour. It's good for people who can't eat gluten. It's also good for people on paleo diets. These diets don't allow grains. Cassava flour is a good substitute for wheat flour in these diets. It's also low in fat. This makes it good for people watching their weight.
Section 9. Cassava flour in global cuisine. Cassava flour is used in many types of food. In Africa, it's used to make a dish called fufu. Fufu is like a dough. People eat it with stews and sauces. In Brazil, they use cassava flour to make farofa. Farofa is a toasted flour. It's sprinkled on other foods for flavor and texture. In some countries, cassava flour is used to make bread. This bread is different from wheat bread. It's often denser and chewier. Some people really like this texture. In other places, cassava flour is used to make flatbreads. These are like tortillas or pancakes. Cassava flour is also used in sweet foods. It can be used to make cakes and cookies. These treats are good for people who can't eat wheat. Some ice cream shops use cassava flour to make cones. These cones are crispy and gluten-free. As cassava flour becomes more popular, chefs are finding new ways to use it. Some are using it in pasta, others are using it to make crispy coatings for fried foods. There are even cassava flour cereals. As more people try cassava flour, we'll probably see even more new foods made with it. Section 10. Economic impact of cassava flour production.
Cassava flour is important for many countries' economies. It provides jobs for many people. Farmers grow the cassava, workers process it into flour, traders sell it in markets. All these people earn money from cassava flour. In some countries, cassava flour is a big export. They sell it to other countries. This brings in money. It helps the country's economy grow. Some countries are trying to export more cassava flour. They see it as a way to make more money. Cassava flour production can help rural areas. It gives farmers a crop to sell. It can create jobs in processing plants. This helps keep people in rural areas. It stops them from moving to cities to find work. This is good for rural development. The cassava flour industry also supports other businesses. It needs machines and packaging. It needs transportation. All these create more jobs and economic activity. As the industry grows, it could have an even bigger impact on economies.
Section 11. The future of cassava flour innovations and sustainability.
The future of cassava flour looks bright. Scientists are working on new cassava varieties. These new plants could produce more roots. They could also be more resistant to diseases. This would help farmers grow more cassava. New technologies are making cassava flour production better. Some companies are using solar power to dry cassava. This is more sustainable than using electricity. Others are finding ways to use cassava waste. They turn it into animal feed or fuel. This makes the whole process more efficient. There's also work being done on improving cassava flour itself. Scientists are looking for ways to make it more nutritious. They're also trying to make it behave more like wheat flour. This could make it easier to use in baking. It could also make it more popular in countries where it's not common. As climate change becomes a bigger problem, cassava might become more important. It can grow in tough conditions. It needs less water than many other crops. This makes it a good choice for areas that are getting drier. In the future, we might see cassava